It is said that somewhere in a remote corner of the world, where maps surrender to blank parchment, and where winds carry more memory than sound, a solitary mountain rises like the bowed spine of an ancient titan. Its ridges, sharp and uneven, resemble the ribs of something once alive, now sleeping beneath layers of time. And at the edge of its shadow, where the earth cools earlier than elsewhere, travelers speak of a stone archway that exhales. No one can say for certain whether it breathes in truth, or whether the mind invents the motion to explain the sensation of cool mountain air flowing steadily from within. But those who stand before it insist the feeling is unmistakable, like the slow, patient breath of a creature that has learned to dream in stone. Tonight, in the quiet hours, when even thoughts walk softly, we step toward that archway. The sand-grey stones that form its curve are worn smooth, as though thousands of years of gentle wind have passed their fingers across its surface. Dust drifts from its threshold in pale curls, rising and falling like incense smoke in a ritual that no longer remembers its purpose. And though the entrance appears no wider than the reach of one's arms, the darkness beyond feels vast, deeper than sight, deeper than silence, deeper perhaps than memory itself. Some believe that this archway marks the first threshold of a library not crafted by hands, but by time, patience, and something older than both. Others whisper that the library is a consequence of listening too closely to the mountain's breath, that the stone, touched by ancient ears, began to shape its own echoes into chambers, hallways, and alcoves where knowledge settled like drifting snow. Whispers tell us that those who enter do so not by choice but by invitation. And so, as dusk fades into the soft bruised colors of night, we cross the boundary. The passageway narrows almost immediately, as though testing the resolve of all who attempt to move deeper. The air grows cooler, wrapped in the faint scent of mineral dust and old secrets. Soft patterns appear along the walls, lunar symbols no brighter than chalk, arranged in curves that follow the flow of the stone itself. Some are shaped like crescents, others like spiral, and some simply dissolve into dots that mimic constellations seen only by those who dream beneath open skies. It is said these moon markings predate the oldest calendars, carved not as writing, but as a reminder that even darkness returns to light if one waits long enough. And yet, here in the passage, their glow remains muted, as though they choose to reveal only a portion of their meaning to each traveler. As we move deeper, the corridor widens without warning. The floor dips gently, like the soft beginning of a staircase, though no clear steps are cut. Instead, the stone has folded itself downward, encouraging the body to follow, to lean into the descent, to trust the mountain's quiet guidance. The faint sound of distant dripping water echoes in a rhythm that resembles slow, measured breathing. Some ascetics of centuries past, wandering sages seeking silence beyond the reach of kingdoms, believed this mountain to be alive. In their journals, preserved only in fragmented quotations, they wrote that the mountain knew the names of those who approached it. They claimed it revealed its inner chambers only to those who walked without purpose, for a wandering mind is an open vessel. To search intentionally was to be turned away, but to drift, to arrive without expectation, was to be welcomed. Whether their words are truth or poetry, it is impossible to know. In forgotten corners of the earth, the line between story and memory blurs like mist in torchlight. Soon the passage opens into the first of many chambers. Its ceiling rises to a height impossible for the narrow corridor to have predicted. Starlight, thin as a thread of silver, drips from a crack high above. The beam falls upon a central stone platform where scrolls rest, their edges curled, their surfaces covered with markings that resemble the patterns of wind skimming across dunes. Each scroll sits in a cradle carved from the mountain itself, smooth hollows, shaped like echoes captured mid-air. The faintest brush of air sends tiny motes of dust swirling around them, a slow dance that catches the falling light. Some believe these scrolls contain the dreams of those who once guarded this place. Others insist they document the earliest stories the earth ever told. Tales written before human language, inscribed by stone remembering what it witnessed. There are legends, too, of scribes who entered the mountain, hoping to bring back knowledge of the divine, only to find their words dissolving when carried beyond the archway. Knowledge here, it seems, remains here. It is kept by the mountain with a patience older than language. We move slowly through the chamber, careful not to disturb the fragile stillness. Every footstep feels like a trespass. Every breath feels too loud. And yet, the mountain exhales again in its soft, steady rhythm, as though inviting us to continue. Another corridor winds outward, curving gently to the right. The walls here are smoother, almost polished, though no tools appear to have touched them. The air is cooler still, and the faint scent of running water grows stronger. This passage leads to a second chamber, larger and dimmer than the first. Pools of clear water gather in shallow basins carved into the floor, each reflecting distorted fragments of the ceiling's faint mineral glow. When one leans closer, the ripples resemble turning pages, shifting, shimmering, never offering a full view. Along the edges of the chamber, alcoves hold slabs of stone carved with symbols whose forms echo ocean tides, swirls, loops, crescents, and wave-like curves fill their surfaces. These carvings are worn, eroded by time, as though thousands of years of quiet moisture have softened them into half-remembered shapes. Some claim these stones contain records of ancient civilizations swallowed by the sea. Others believe they capture the first attempts of early wanderers to understand tides, wind, and the passage of seasons. The truth may lie somewhere between myth and memory, nestled in the soft space where the mountain keeps its secrets. We linger there a while, listening to the gentle drip of water from above, each drop falling like the slow beat of a forgotten clock. Where memory fades, sound remains. A narrow archway leads from this chamber into the deepest passage yet. The air grows denser, as though thickened by countless layers of silence. Even the echo of footsteps feels muted, absorbed by the walls before it can return. This is the passage that ascetics described as the throat of the mountain, a place where sound enters and never emerges. Some who walked it claimed to hear whispers that did not belong to them. Others felt as though the stone itself was humming with ancient breath. A few insisted the mountain spoke in a voice too soft to decipher, offering wisdom intended only for the soul, not the ear. Tonight, we pass through that deep corridor slowly, letting the quiet settle over us like a veil. The darkness softens, the air cools further, and after a long descent, the passage widens into the final chamber, the largest, the quietest, the most ancient. The light here is faint and diffused, as though even illumination becomes reverent in this space. The chamber stretches outward in a circular shape, its walls lined with carved shelves. Most are empty. A few contain stone tablets or curled fragments of parchment. All are arranged in a slow spiral, as if circling a truth too sacred to stand still. At the center stands a sealed gate. Not a door, not an opening, a gate, crafted from stone the color of dusk sky etched with celestial symbols and encircled by dust as fine as powdered bone. It does not open. It does not close. It simply is, waiting with the patience of an age untouched. Some say this gate leads to the heart of the library, where the mountain keeps its oldest memories. Others believe it guards the stories of worlds that existed before our own. A vault of beginnings, preserved in silence so complete that even time cannot disturb it. Perhaps it has never been meant to open. Or perhaps it waits for a listener not yet born. Tonight, as we stand before it, the mountain exhales once more, slow, cool, and steady. The sound is soft, like the last page of a story turning itself. And in that moment, one feels a strange certainty that some knowledge chooses its keepers with a patience older than stars. That wisdom does not call out, it simply waits. And that this mountain, breathing gently in its sleep, guards more than memory. It guards silence itself. We step back slowly, leaving the gate untouched. Behind us, the chambers remain quiet. The scrolls rest. The water pools shimmer. The carved symbols fade softly into shadow. And the passageway that once guided us inward now feels like a gentle reminder that not all journeys require an ending. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And some doors, especially the sacred ones, remain closed not to keep us out, but to remind us that mystery too is a form of knowledge. It is said that in the vastness of a desert, where dunes move like tides of powdered gold, there are moments at twilight when the horizon seems to loosen, as though the world exhales and the sky itself leans closer to the earth. In such moments, some travelers have claimed to see a faint glimmer beneath the shifting sands. Not a mirage, not the trick of exhaustion, but the slow breathing shimmer of something ancient waiting to be found. Whispers tell us that this glimmer belongs to a hall long swallowed by the wandering desert, a place where stone has endured centuries of wind, salt, and silence, a hall whose mirrors do not speak of faces or forms, but of the heavens as they once were, long before our time, long before memory gathered into the shape of what we now call night. And so the story begins with you standing before a half-buried doorway, the desert cooling around your ankles as the first shadows of evening brush the sand. The lintel above the entrance carries constellations carved so delicately that even after 1,000 storms, their faint glow lingers like breath on a window. The patterns do not belong to any known sky. Some spiral outward like petals of dusk. Others twist like rivers of forgotten time. A few flicker with the soft golden dust caught in the grooves, as if remembering a moment when the whole world once shone brighter. You place your hand against the stone, warm still from the sun's departing touch, and it yields a quiet vibration, the humming echo of an old promise, perhaps an invitation, perhaps a warning, perhaps just the settling sigh of a hall that has waited far too long. Beneath the silence, the doorway opens. Inside, the air is cool, tasting faintly of ancient minerals and something older still. The scent of memory made physical. Torches long extinguished still cast faint outlines of where flames once danced. A corridor stretches before you, narrow and unhurried, a pathway carved by hands that believed in the sky more deeply than they believed in themselves. The deeper you walk, the softer the world becomes. Footsteps sink into sand that has wandered inside over centuries, carried by wind and time. The darkness does not feel empty. Instead, it watches with quiet curiosity like a library waiting for its first reader in 1,000 years. And then, as your steps slow, the corridor widens into a vast chamber, the hall of mirrors. They rise along the walls like silent guardians, tall as fallen pillars, slender as moonlit lakes upright in stone frames. Dust lies upon them like old parchment. Their surfaces reflect nothing at all, only the dim outline of the hall, as though they have forgotten how to echo the living world. You breathe, and the sound is swallowed immediately. Some believe the mirrors were crafted by astronomer priests who once feared that the heavens would shift and that future generations would lose their way. Others insist that the mirrors formed naturally, polished smooth by centuries of desert breath until they became thin windows into time itself. But no one knows the truth. And so you step closer to the nearest mirror. A faint pulse moves across its surface like a ripple of moonlight touching water. Slowly, softly, the glass awakens. Not with brightness, but with the muted glow of distant stars. Stars not seen in millennia. Patterns no eye now knows. Galaxies arranged like forgotten hymns. It is said that the sky has changed more times than history will ever admit. What we see above us now is only the latest chapter in a cosmic book whose earlier pages were written in fire. This mirror remembers. The next mirror stirs, then another, until the hall fills with a gentle shimmer, as if you stand in the center of a celestial tide. The mirrors reveal storms of light rolling across the heavens, the slow blooming of ancient comets, eclipses that turned entire continents into brief, reverent darkness. Some show spirals of stars that burned out long before humanity took its first breath. Others show constellations marked by the moon, figures once used by wanderers who crossed oceans of sand and silence. You lean closer to one that glows with soft copper light. It shows a sky you almost recognize. Almost. But the constellation at its center bends subtly differently, as if remembering a long-lost version of the world. There is a longing in the glass, a hush, a gentle sorrow for something that once was and will never again be. The mirrors begin to hum, a tone so low and fragile it settles into your bones rather than your ears. It does not frighten. It feels like the breath of an old friend. Where memory fades, the hall remembers. Deeper still, a mirror shows a celestial storm in slow motion. Waves of radiance folding over themselves. Dust clouds blooming like ancient flowers. The storm turns, slow and ceremonial, as though the sky itself were performing an old ritual. In another mirror, the sky is dark, except for one lonely star pulsing softly. Each pulse feels like a heartbeat. Yours. Or perhaps the heartbeat of some forgotten universe. You wander between the mirrors like a pilgrim in a sanctuary of light. Each one offers a different sky, a different chapter of cosmic memory. You search for your own reflection, half expecting it to appear in the corner of your vision. but it never does. The hall ignores the living. It remembers only the stars. Somewhere in the far end of the chamber, a mirror remains dim. You notice it only when all others have brightened, their soft radiance turning the hall into an underwater dream of drifting light. The dim mirror stands alone, its frame cracked, its surface dulled by centuries of sand. You approach it slowly, as if nearing something asleep. The mirror holds only a faint shimmer, a hesitant glimmer, like a signal that has not yet chosen to burn. And in that dimness, there is a feeling you cannot name. Not sadness, not hope, not fear. Something quieter, lying beneath all those things. A star not yet born. A memory not yet lived. A future still gathering itself in the folds of time. You reach out, but stop just before touching the surface, sensing the fragility of what it holds. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And perhaps this star will speak only when the right dreamer stands before it. In another era, under another sky. Slowly, the hall dims. The mirrors fade one by one, like lanterns being gently covered. The celestial storms collapse into dust. The forgotten constellations retreat into silence. The darkness returns, soft, warm, and unafraid. You take a step back, and the hall exhales. A whisper of the sand drifts across the floor. The chamber grows still, returning to the timeless rest from which you briefly awakened it. Behind you, the corridor beckons faintly, its shadows now familiar. Ahead, the desert waits, spreading its endless golden tides beneath a night that knows nothing of the old sky the mirrors once remembered. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps the hall simply wished to show you that the universe too keeps its own library of lost light. And that memory, no matter how faint, belongs to all things that have ever learned to shine. You step through the doorway, back into the desert's cool breath. Above you, the modern sky glitters with its familiar constellations. Yet for a moment, just one, you imagine you see a faint pattern out of place, a shy gleam waiting patiently among the stars, a star not yet born, or perhaps one quietly remembering you. The dunes shift, the silence deepens, and the hall slips once more into dream. It is said that high upon a mist-wrapped cliff, where the wind moves like an ancient memory searching for its name, there lies a monastery built in the shape of a perfect ring. Those who have wandered far enough along the narrow trail leading up the mountain speak of seeing it only at certain hours of the day, when the fog thins just enough to reveal the faint silhouette of its circular walls, glowing with the faded gold of forgotten sunrise. Some believe the monastery was raised in a single night, formed from stone breathed out by the earth itself. Others whisper that it was carved slowly, over centuries, by monks who believed that time was not a river flowing forward, but a patient, ever-returning circle, soft, inevitable, sacred. Tonight, imagine yourself arriving at its threshold. Before you stands a weathered gateway cut from sandstone, the color of dusk-worn honey. Spirals have been carved into its arch, loops, and ever-repeating rings smoothed by centuries of wind, rain, and the gentle grazing of passing fingertips. No one knows who carved them first. No one knows who carved them last. Beneath the silence, the spirals seem to pulse, almost like the steady breath of a sleeping giant. Beyond the gate hangs a line of bells. They do not ring. Their metal has long since dulled to a deep bronze green, soft as moss on a forgotten tomb. Yet in the shifting wind, the bells sway gently, as though recalling a melody they once offered to the sky. If one listens closely, very closely, there are echoes inside them, faint as ghosts. Perhaps memories, perhaps prayers, or perhaps simply the remnants of time that refuse to move forward. Stepping into the monastery's circular corridor, the air cools, the light dims. Shadows here do not behave like ordinary shadows. Some stretch softly across the walls, long and slow, as if hesitating. Others curl around the curve of the hall as if following a path they have traced countless times before. It is quiet, deep quiet. A quiet that does not merely surround you, but seems to settle inside the bones. The monks who once lived here believe that every moment contains within it the seed of all other moments. They wrote their thoughts in looping scripts, inked circles that spiraled gently toward their centers, before blooming outward again, mirroring the endless breath of the cosmos. Their scrolls have been found in fragments scattered throughout the corridor. Each piece contains phrases that return upon themselves. Where memory fades, memory begins. The end is the echo of the beginning. To walk forward is to arrive where you have always been. Some scrolls are so old the ink has faded into the paper like shadows dissolving into mist. Others remain surprisingly dark, as though the words refuse to age. Scholars who once visited reported strange sensations while reading them. Time slowing, thoughts drifting in circular patterns, the heart beating with a rhythm that does not belong to the body alone. As you walk deeper along the corridor's curve, the sensation grows more noticeable. Footsteps ripple through the air, soft and slow, creating the impression that someone else is walking just behind you or just ahead, but always just out of sight. Perhaps it is simply the sound rebounding gently around the arc, or perhaps it is the echo of one who walked the same path long ago, repeating their steps in time's endless loop. In forgotten corners of the monastery, broken statues sit draped in vines. Their faces are smooth, featureless, as if time has erased every identity but preserved the shape of devotion itself. Some hold circular relics, carved from stone. Others cradle empty bowls that once held sacred incense, now only filled with the dust of distant centuries. A faint scent lingers in the air. Sandalwood, aged parchment, and something else. Something like rain falling in a dream. You pass beneath archways cracked with age, their surfaces etched with celestial symbols. Crescent moons, spiraling stars, rings that deepen inward until they vanish at a single point. It is said that when the monks meditated beneath these carvings, they could feel the world's breath pulsing through the stone. Some claimed to sense the turning of seasons as a soft vibration beneath the soles of their feet. A few believed they could hear time itself. And then, on day, they vanished. There was no fire, no collapse, no sign of mass departure. Only the circular footprint of their days remained, bowls left arranged in spirals, ropes tied in concentric loops, books placed in perfect rings, as though each object had been set down carefully, reverently, just moments before the entire monastery exhaled and fell silent. Whispers tell us they did not die or flee. They simply walked deeper into the circle, deeper into the rhythm, deeper into the breath of time, Some believe they stepped across a threshold unseen by human eyes, an invisible fold where beginnings and endings kiss like old companions. Others think the monastery itself became a doorway, opening not into another place, but another pattern of existence where time is not counted, but felt. As you continue walking, the corridor curves again and again. And yet somehow the sequence feels different each time. A crack you passed moments earlier appears subtly altered, as though shaped by a breath that happened centuries ago. A flicker of light across the wall shifts entirely, though no torch burns nearby. Even the air, cool upon your skin, seems to hold an ancient exhale. You begin to feel the soft loosening of chronology. Memories rise without order. Some come warmly, like lanterns glowing in distant windows. Others drift like feathers with no origin and no destination. The past no longer feels behind you. The future no longer feels ahead. Everything exists here in the same slow breath. The corridor opens at last into the monastery's heart. A wide courtyard open to the sky. Mist floats above the ground like a thin veil. In the center lies a single stone ring set into the earth. Its surface is smooth, circular, seamless. It radiates a faint warmth, gentle and steady, like a heartbeat carved into the land. Some say if you place your palm upon it, you will feel time drifting beneath your skin, spiraling, returning, remembering. Others say you may hear the monks chanting far beneath the surface, their voices turning like stars in orbit. Standing here, one feels as though the courtyard is not a place, but a pause. A stillness between two breaths of the universe. Clouds move slowly above, their shapes shifting in broad, unhurried spirals. The wind swirls around the ring in gentle circles, carrying echoes of things half remembered, half forgotten. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it only reveals itself to those who arrive at the right moment in their own inner circle. You linger in the soft breath of the place. You feel the quiet gather around you like a shawl. Time, for a moment, loosens its grip. The world outside fades into a gentle hum. The ring seems to pulse, not outward, but inward, drawing the senses toward a deeper stillness. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And when at last you step back from the courtyard and walk once more along the curved corridor, the air feels subtly different. The shadows seem softer. The silence seems warmer. Even your own breath feels slower, as if marking a rhythm older than your lifetime. You exit through the gateway carved with spirals, and the bells sway once more in the mountain wind. Silent but resonant, mist gathers again, veiling the monastery's walls. Soon the circle will hide itself completely, curling once more into its own quiet eternity. As you descend the path, one thought drifts softly behind you, like a gentle echo. Time does not always move forward. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it loops. And sometimes it remembers. The city that sang only at dusk a night ritual chapter. For bedtime, listening. It is said that somewhere beyond the known maps, beyond the familiar caravans of stars, there lies a valley, where the light bends as if remembering a softer age. Travelers speak of it rarely, and only in hushed breaths, for the valley is wrapped in a constant blue mist, a curtain of vapor that moves like a living veil, shifting and folding upon itself as though guarding whatever rests within. Some believe the mist is the valley's ancient breath. Others whisper that it is memory made visible, the lingering exhale of a civilization swallowed by time. You step into this valley as dusk begins its slow descent. The sky dims into shades of indigo and faded copper, as though the day has grown tired and is ready to sigh. Beneath your feet, the ground hums faintly with the warmth of the stones that have held centuries of sun. Somewhere ahead, ruins rise from the haze. Silhouettes of pillars, archways, and broken altars, their forms softened by layers of dust and the gentle kiss of wind. This is the lost city the elders once called Eshelem, though the name has been nearly erased by sand and silence. Some say the name means the echoing place. Others insist it means city of twilight breath. But all stories agree on one truth. When the sun sinks low, when the sky glows in its final breath of amber and violet, the stones of Eshelem begin to sing. Tonight, as you cross the threshold into the old square, dusk settles upon your shoulders like a ceremonial cloak. You move slowly, reverently, as though guided by an unseen hand. Crumbled pillars rise around you like ancient tuning forks, aligned in forgotten geometries. Their surfaces are etched with spirals, star marks, and worn symbols that seem to glow faintly as daylight thins. Broken archways stretch across the square like skeletal ribs of an immense sleeping creature, casting elongated shadows that reach towards you, then fall away. The air changes. Beneath the silence, a soft vibration begins, no louder than the hush of a distant tide. It is gentle at first, a fragile trembling within the stones. You pause, listening. The sound resembles chimes, stirred by a wind that does not exist. A tremor of delicate notes rising from the very bones of the city. Some old chronicles claim this phenomenon came from unusual minerals layered beneath the stonework. Minerals that resonated when the cooler air touched them at dusk. Others speak of a different truth, one wrapped in myth and moonlit lore, that the people of Eshelem once sang to their stones every evening, offering harmonies shaped by devotion, ceremony, and longing. Over generations, the stones learned to echo those voices, keeping their memories alive even as the people vanished. As the vibration deepens, you walk farther into the square. Blue mist curls around your ankles, embracing each step as though the city itself is welcoming you, or perhaps simply studying you. The hum grows richer, weaving itself into layers. Low tones, high glimmers, a pulse of resonance that seems to breathe in time with your heartbeat. Whispers tell us that only at dusk does the veil between the city's memory and the present thin enough for the song to rise. Perhaps what you hear now is not merely sound, but the residue of emotion the stones once absorbed. The laughter of distant festivals, the cadence of prayers offered beneath torchlight, the collective breath of ceremonies performed beneath the waxing moon. You touch a sandstone block near a toppled column. It vibrates gently beneath your palm, its tone resonating through your skin, up your arm, and into your chest. For a moment, you feel the faint impression of something old, the warmth of countless hands laid in ritual greeting, the persistent hope of a people who wove music into every corner of their lives. The hum shimmers like heat haze, bending the air, bending time. Deep within the square, A pathway lined with fractured statues opens before you. Their faces have long been erased by wind and years, but their poses still speak. Arms lifted, palms open, prepared for offering or invocation. Between them, thin rays of golden hour light filter through the rising mist, as though the sun is offering its final blessing before dipping behind the valley's jagged rim. Here, the song becomes more intricate. The tones braid together like threads of silver and bronze, forming patterns that skirt the edge of language. You cannot understand the words, and if they are words, yet something within you responds. A subtle ache in the heart, a stirring behind the ribs, a recognition that does not rely on knowledge. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. The ruins ahead form the broken outline of what might once have been a gathering hall. Its entrance is marked by two colossal pillars, carved with celestial spirals, each one descending toward the earth like a frozen waterfall of symbols. As you approach, the air feels cooler, dense with memory. The twilight deepens. The mist glows faintly, reflecting the last threads of saffron light. Inside the hall, shadows gather like silent witnesses. Cracks in the ceiling let thin shafts of pale dusk filter down, illuminating dust motes that drift like floating prayers. So the song surrounds you here, wrapping your senses in waves of ancient resonance. It rises from the floor, from the walls, from the very air. A chorus of tones so soft, so patient, that you wonder how long they have been waiting to be heard again. Some claim that the people of Eshalem vanished in a single night. Others say they departed slowly, fading from the city, like echoes fading in distance. One myth insists they became part of the stones themselves, their voices trapped in perpetual twilight. But no account explains why the city sings only at dusk, nor why the hum dissolves precisely when night fully claims the sky. Perhaps it is the meeting point between day and night, the fragile liminal breath that allows memory to take form for just a moment before disappearing. As the last light weakens beyond the valley walls, the tones shift once more. They lose their clarity, melting into a warm, resonant glow. You feel it in your ribs, like the aftertouch of a distant bell. The ruins around you seem to lean inward, listening with you, as if sharing a secret meant for no words. Then, slowly, the sound begins to fade, not abruptly, but tenderly, the way an ember dims, or a dream loosens its hold upon waking. The mist thickens. The pillars fade into silhouettes. The air becomes so quiet, it feels like a living presence, as though silence itself has taken form and wrapped the city in a final embrace. Perhaps the song was never meant to be understood. Perhaps it was never meant to be captured or explained. Like the echo of a dream you can almost recall, it lingers only as feeling. Something soft, something ancient, something that touches the soul but not the mind. You stand in the stillness, letting the silence settle into you. It is said that those who experience the twilight song carry its resonance long after they leave the valley. Not as a memory, but as a gentle shifting in the heart, a reminder that some truths cannot be spoken, only felt. When darkness finally descends, the city falls quiet. Absolutely, exquisitely quiet. The ruins return to their slumber, blue mist folding around them like a shroud. You turn to leave, guided not by sight, but by the faintest lingering vibration beneath your feet. the echo of a hum that may never rise again, or may return only when the valley decides another wanderer is ready. Where memory fades, the stones breathe once more, and somewhere deep within the silence, a song dreams of being heard. It is said that in the far southern reaches of the world, in a place where the map grows soft at the edges, dissolving into green mist and forgetting its own boundaries, there lies a cavern that breathes like an ancient lung. Few claim to have seen it. Fewer still are believed. Yet its name survives in the hushed corners of river lore, carried in the drifting lull of reeds, the archive of suspended rain. Tonight, you walk toward it. Just beyond the last outpost of the known world, where the jungle swells in great emerald curtains, there is a narrow trail that only wind remembers. Vines sway like half-forgotten prayers. Moss spreads across fallen trunks in a tapestry of soft, muted greens. And somewhere beneath this living canopy, a quiet, sacred invitation takes shape. A vine-draped opening carved into stone older than any tribe that lives nearby. You pause before it. A warm dusk glow lingers on the leaves, and the first hints of fog coil at your feet, curling inward as if urging you forward. From within the cavern, a faint sound drifts outward. The slow, deliberate dripping of water. Though each drop seems too spaced, too patient, too aware of its descent to be ordinary, you step inside. The entrance narrows before widening into a vast interior, as if the earth has been hollowed by the breath of a god. The sound of dripping continues, echoing through the tunnels in soft, irregular rhythms. Yet something is strange in the air. A coolness that feels woven with memory. A humidity that clings like an ancient whisper. As you walk deeper, the sound sharpens. Then, in the first chamber, the truth reveals itself in gentle, impossible clarity. Rain is falling, yet not falling at all. Droplets descend from the ceiling like beads of glass, each one suspended in mid-air, caught in the moment between motion and silence. They hang at different heights, a constellation of liquid stars trapped in the slow gravity of a forgotten ritual. Some droplets shimmer with a faint inner glow, as though holding fragments of lost sunlight. Others appear entirely clear, pure as mountain breath, and in the still air they hum softly, as if whispering to one another in a language older than speech. Along the curved walls, hundreds of clay vessels rest in carved alcoves. Inside them, scrolls made from reeds, bark, and woven fiber lie preserved in the cool air. Their surfaces are etched with symbols, some familiar, others so intricate they seem meant for hands no longer living. It is said that these scrolls once belonged to the river tribes who dwelled between the jungle's arteries, people who believed that rain did not merely fall from the sky, but returned from it, carrying memories, warnings, and echoes of distant winds. Some believed that if one could catch a drop before it touched the ground, one could read its message. And here in this impossible archive, every drop has been caught. You walk with quiet reverence, passing from the first chamber into another, then another, each room shaped by the temperament of its suspended rain. One chamber breathes with the softness of pre-dawn mist. The air is cool, touched with the faint scent of wet stone. Droplets here are small, delicate, ghost-like. Barely visible, unless the dim torchlight strikes them just so. They hang in dense clusters, forming curtains of dew that shift only when you breathe or when your hand drifts close. Tribal markings on the walls depict early morning rituals. Silhouettes gathering by rivers, hands cupped upward, eyes closed as if listening not to thunder, but to memory. Further in, the atmosphere grows warmer. A chamber glows with an amber hue, lit by torches set deep into the stone. The suspended rain here is heavier, rounder, as if shaped from monsoon breath. There is weight in the droplets, a sense of patience, as though they contain the long, slow stories of storms carried across continents. Carvings reveal towering clouds and spiraling winds, not feared, but revered as bearers of forgotten truths. Deeper still, the droplets darken. Some contain earthy red tones, like clay stirred into water. This chamber feels older, more solemn. Tribes long vanished may have gathered here to interpret signs carried in the rain, omens written not in ink, but in the trembling skins of droplets. Scrolls in this room appear more worn, edges frayed, ink faded, as though touched by the breath of centuries. With each chamber you cross, the jungle's voice grows quieter behind you, replaced by the soft murmuring of water that never completes its descent. You begin to sense that this archive is not merely a record. It is a dream of the sky itself, held in the earth's secret heart. As you stop before one particularly luminous drop, you notice something stirring inside it. A faint shimmer, the idea of movement. Perhaps it is a trick of the torchlight, or perhaps the old stories are true, that every droplet reflects not the world around it, but the path it traveled before sliding through the clouds. Some drops hold flickers of silver, like night stars reflected through thin mist. Some glow faint blue, like the breath of storms gathering beyond the horizon. Others seem to contain swirling patterns, thin as smoke, shifting when observed. The silence is not hollow here. It is alive, knitted from the soft hum of suspended memory. You begin to feel the weight of watching, as if the droplets themselves are aware of your presence, holding their silence until the moment you are ready to listen. Some say that rain contains the sky's unanswered questions. Others whisper that droplets remember the shape of every land they have touched, every wind that carried them, every voice spoken beneath their storms. And here, in this cavern, those memories never settle. They never merge with the soil. They never disappear. They remain in hesitation, in a long, gentle waiting. At the deepest point of the archive, where the walls breathe cold and the air tastes of stone untouched by sun, you find a still pool carved into the floor. It is quiet, so quiet that even your heartbeat seems reluctant to disturb the calm. The pool is not large, perhaps the width of a small boat, but its surface is immaculate, without a single ripple. Droplets fall toward it from above, but none ever reach. They stop just a hair's breadth above the water, frozen in the final moment before touch, like 1,000 tiny promises held in suspension. You step closer, and the surface of the pool stirs, not outward, but inward. It reflects the ceiling, intricate stone patterns, suspended droplets, the soft amber glow of the distant torches. But not the floor beneath your feet. It holds the world above, but not the world below. It mirrors the sky of the cavern, but not the body of the earth. as though it remembers only one direction, the path from which the rain came. You kneel beside it, sensing that the pool carries a message not yet revealed, a question left unanswered. Some voices only echo when the listener is ready. Some secrets drift in patience until the dreamer steps close enough to hear. And so you lean toward the water. The suspended droplets shimmer faintly around you. The cavern breathes. The air deepens with quiet expectation. Perhaps the pool will speak. Perhaps the rain will reveal its story. Perhaps the sky will whisper in liquid memory. Or perhaps it was never meant to be known. Only the silence answers. You rise slowly, letting the stillness settle around you like a cloak. The path back through the chambers feels different now. Not because the rooms have changed, but because something within you has shifted. The droplets remain in their patient suspension. The vessels rest in their alcoves. The forgotten scrolls guard the soul secrets of river tribes that no longer walk the world. And as you step back through the vine-draped entrance, returning to the breath of the jungle, you feel the faint echo of the cavern behind you, a place where rain hangs between worlds, carrying messages that never quite reach the earth. Some truths, it seems, linger forever in hesitation. Some memories drift in silence, waiting for a listener who may never arrive. And some whispers of the sky remain unanswered, their meaning suspended like droplets in a hidden archive deep within the southern jungles. It begins with an image whispered by dusk itself. A solitary gate rising from the edge of a barren plateau, its pillars half buried in the quiet drifts of wandering sand. For those who approach from the long road of the west, it appears first as a dark seam against the pale horizon, no more distinct than a mirage. But as the sun tilts toward its final descent, the gate grows clearer, steadier, as though it has been waiting for your arrival. Some say the structure was once part of a greater fortress, long since devoured by time. Others insist it was never meant to guard anything at all, that its purpose was not to keep intruders out, but to witness every soul who dared to pass through it. Its pillars rise in noble stillness, carved with grooves so fine and so numerous that they resemble tally marks stretching toward infinity. If you stand close enough for your breath to stir the dust at its base, you may notice how the grooves shift in the failing light, their patterns bending and widening like an ancient script, rearranging itself for the first time in centuries. It is said these marks were not chiseled by human hands. Whispers tell us they emerged naturally over the ages, carved not by tools but by footsteps. Or rather, by the intentions of those footsteps. For this was no ordinary threshold. This was the gate that counted forgotten footsteps. As evening deepens, you find yourself drawing near. The wind brushes against the stone like a palm across brittle parchment. Each gust brings with it the faintest sound, something between a sigh and a memory. Sand has gathered in shallow bowls at the foot of the pillars, formed by years of careful drifting, as if even the desert itself pauses here in quiet reverence. The plateau stretches behind you in pale golds and muted reds, an open plain where shadows lengthen into gentle rivers. Ahead, the gate rises, large enough to dwarf your presence, but not so large as to impose fear. It stands not as a monument to power, but as a monument to passage. A liminal place, suspended between what was and what might be. Some believe this gate once marked an ancient pilgrimage route, trodden by wanderers who sought wisdom, healing, or the peace that comes from leaving behind the burdens of ordinary life. They say that each pilgrim passed beneath the arch with a singular intention, and that the gate, sensing this, added another silent groove to its pillars. Others whisper a different tale. They speak of a forgotten order, an old brotherhood of watchers whose robes were dyed in colors now lost to memory. These watchers, it was said, stood vigil not to count people, but destinies. They believed each traveler carried with them a path of possibility, a line of fate. The watchers listened for the echo of these destinies, marking the stone each time a new one crossed into the unknown. Whether these stories hold truth or merely dreamlike suggestion, no one alive can say. For the watchers vanished, the pilgrims ceased, and the desert slowly reclaimed its dominion. Only the gate remains, steadfast and mute, though some say it still remembers. You stand before it now. The last light of sunset drapes itself along the stone, washing the grooves in warm, fading gold. For a moment, it feels as if the gate is breathing, not with the sharpness of life, but with the long, slow cadence of an ancient presence. Its shadow stretches behind it like a darkened pool, soft and cool against the gathering night. If you close your eyes, you may sense something else. A subtle invitation, gentle recognition. Not a judgment, not a command, only acknowledgement. As though the gate, in its quiet way, is saying, "You have come. I see you." Beneath the silence, there's a faint hum, a memory without sound, a story without words. The grooves seem to shift again, reacting to your nearness. Some widen, some narrow, and some appear so briefly in the dusk that you cannot be sure they were ever there at all. Perhaps the gate is remembering other footsteps. Footsteps that crossed here centuries ago, seeking lands now swallowed by the patient embrace of dust. Perhaps it is recalling voices that once echoed across this plateau, voices that carried prayers, promises, or even farewells to the lives they left behind. You take a step closer. The sand shifts softly beneath you, and as your foot settles, the air grows still. It is said that this is the moment when the gate begins listening, not to the sound of your movement, but to the quiet intention behind it. The desert around you seems to dim as twilight gathers. Daylight grows pale at the edges, and a cool blue begins to seep across the sky. The first stars arrive. Not bright, but cautious, dawn, like ancient travelers, uncertain if they are welcome to linger. The atmosphere thickens with a sense of expectation. You feel it in the small hollow between your ribs, in the weight of your breathing, in the hush that settles over the sand. Slowly, deliberately, you walk toward the archway. The moment you step beneath it, something stirs within the stone, a trembling, so faint you might mistake it for the distant shifting of dunes. But no, this tremble is different. It reaches into you, not with force, but with awareness. A gentle sensation rises, like the brush of warm fingers upon your shoulder. It is a feeling of being noted, not judged, recorded, but with kindness. Perhaps this is what those who came before you felt. A moment of soft recognition, as though the gate itself holds a long memory of each who passed beneath it. Some voices tell us this memory is not kept in the grooves alone. They say the gate stores these remembrances in the thin spaces between stone and shadow, in the drifting bowls of sand, in the silent breath of the desert wind. Others insist the memory lingers in the very air around the archway, visible only to those who walk through with a quiet heart. You pause at the center, letting the cool shadow wrap around you. Above, the fading sky peers down through the open rectangle of the gate, offering its growing host of stars. A single breeze rustles the sand, lifting a few grains into a slow, swirling dance. They circle your ankles like tiny spirits and then drift away, carried by the night. Beyond the gate lies only open land, immense, hushed, luminous beneath the rising moon. The plateau stretches onward in a wash of silver blue light, its surface glimmering like an ancient ocean turned to stone. In the far distance, faint outlines of forgotten hills rise like the backs of sleeping giants. You take in this view, and something in it touches you softly. A sense of belonging, perhaps. Or perhaps the realization that you are part of a lineage of travelers stretching far beyond memory. You have crossed the threshold that others once crossed. You have added your presence to a story that continues to echo through time. The wind grows gentler now, as though settling into sleep. The gate stands behind you, its pillars framed by moonlight, its grooves shimmering faintly as if still shifting, still remembering. Some believe the gate no longer counts footsteps, that in its old age it has ceased the act of tallying and now simply holds all that it has received. Each step, each intention, each whispered hope or silent promise is etched into its being like a soft echo in stone. Perhaps that is the truth. Perhaps footsteps were never meant to be counted in the way we imagine. Perhaps each one was meant to be remembered, held like a small flame in the dark. And as you stand there, between what lies behind and what opens before, you feel a quiet certainty bloom within you. The gate remembers you, not as a number, not as a mark, but as a presence, held gently in its endless silence. The night deepens, the plateau grows still, and somewhere, between shadow and moonlight, the gate whispers a soft farewell, one you feel more than hear. It fades into the hush of the desert, leaving you with only the lingering sense that some echoes are meant to live forever. It is said that in the far, far north, beyond the reaches of familiar maps, beyond the soft murmur of traveling winds, there lies a horizon woven from frost. Here, winter is not merely a season, but a presence. A slow-breathing guardian whose whispers shape the very silence around you. At the hour before sunrise, when the world is caught between breath and stillness, the light arrives as a pale shimmer. It spreads across frozen plains like a wanderer brushing its fingers across ancient lace, revealing patterns too delicate to last under the weight of day. And it is in this quiet threshold of dawn that you find yourself standing before the wall of ice, translucent, towering, a cathedral carved not by human hands, but by time itself. The surface glows with a muted blue, like the last ember of a forgotten star. Within its depths, faint shapes pause in eternal suspension. lines etched with impossible precision, looping spirals frozen in a dance they began before memory was born. They hover like insects preserved in amber, though older, quieter, touched by something more ancient than life. You step closer, and the cold greets you, not harshly, not like the bite of mortal winter, but like a soft exhalation, an ancient breath brushing against your skin, carrying with it the echo of long-buried worlds. A thin mist rises from the ice, drifting like smoke from the lips of a sleeping mountain. Some believe this mist is the chronicle breathing, releasing fragments of story in the only language winter knows. Slow, impatient silence. Whispers tell us the chronicle is older than the first words ever shaped by warm tongue, older than carved stone, older even than the oceans that once laid their hands across the newborn earth. The symbols inside the ice do not remain still. They refract as the light shifts, bending gently, almost imperceptibly, like living script adjusting to the gaze of the listener. Some explorers claimed the shapes changed entirely, depending on the watcher's heart. If one approached with fear, the spirals tightened. If with awe, they loosened into soft, expanding rings. Others said the chronicle remained unreadable until one approached with only absolute stillness inside. For only silence can recognize silence. Yet the truth is never offered so easily. Beneath the ice, deeper still, lie layers upon layers of frost, strata of cold memory stacked through ages. And through these layers, the symbols pulse, softly, like the embers of a dream reluctant to fade. A pale glow, a heartbeat of forgotten epochs. Some believe these pulses are echoes of celestial events, the memory of a star's birth or death trapped in ice. Others say they are records of times when the earth first learned to breathe. And there are those who whisper even stranger things, that the chronicle is not a memory of the world, but the world's memory of us. As dawn strengthens, the light seeps deeper, illuminating the farthest chambers of the frozen wall. You glimpse vast spirals collapsing into geometric constellations, lines that intersect like whispered paths, symbols that resemble seeds, feathers, faded lunar marks, and somewhere near the center, a shape like a closed eye, resting, waiting, dreaming through eons of sunless cold. The ice does not melt, even when touched. It remains unyielding, as though held together by more than simple frost, as though the story inside understands the weight of being known, and chooses instead to remain patient. Whispers say the chronicle reveals itself only to those who carry winter quietly in their bones, that some shapes are visible only by breath, held long enough to match the rhythm of the frozen world. And so you wait. You breathe slowly. You let the cold settle around you like a robe of stillness. And something changes. The symbols seem to tremble, with the softness almost tender. Their glow spreads, branching through the ice like veins of distant daylight. Then, as though acknowledging your presence, the frozen wall exhales again, sending out a faint, crystalline whisper, a sound like snowflakes brushing against stone, a sound like the memory of snowfall before the first creature walked the earth, a sound that feels less heard than remembered. But still, the story remains locked, held in the patience of an age that does not measure time in years, but in the slow, steady turning of seasons. Perhaps it was never meant to be read by warm hands and waking eyes. Perhaps winter writes only for itself, or perhaps the chronicle waits for an ending that has not yet arrived. The wind stirs. It gathers around you like a final note of a fading song. Tiny crystals lift into the air, shimmering like miniature constellations rising from the snow. And as the gust moves past, it seems to carry a fragment of sound, a whisper shaped in frost. Not yet. Maybe that is all the chronicle has left to give tonight. Not an answer, not a revelation, but a reminder that some stories grow only in shadow and time, that some truths choose their readers carefully, that beneath the silence of winter, history sleeps with eyes half open. You step back. The frozen plain stretches endlessly behind you. Ahead, the chronicle waits, unmoving, unread, unbroken. The glow inside softens, like a candle turned inward, retreating into its ancient chambers. And as you walk away, the wind follows gently, brushing past your shoulders like a closing curtain. The crystalline whisper fades into the vast northern quiet, leaving behind the sense that something old has watched you, measured you, and returned to dreaming. Where memory fades, winter remembers. Where voices fall silent, frost continues to speak. And in the breath of winter, ever cold, ever patient, some stories wait for a listener who may never come, or who may already be dreaming. In the farthest bend of a canyon carved by rivers, long surrendered to time, there stands a place where twilight never fully ends. It is said the canyon itself was once split by a single stroke of light, a wound in the stone left by an ancient skyfall. And in the hollow of that wound, sheltered by walls the color of sleeping embers, rises a temple lit not by flame, but by the memory of one. The air grows cool as you approach, as though the canyon guards a secret too old to warm. Before you stands the first threshold, a weather-worn gate shaped from the canyon's own bones. Its arch is delicate despite its age, traced with symbols so faint they seem to breathe whenever the dusk wind sighs through the pass. Some believe these carvings were etched by hands older than any kingdom, older even than the rivers that once roared here. Others whisper that the symbols emerged on their own, growing like lichen where silence gathered thickest. You step beneath the arch, and the world hushes as though bowing in welcome. Even the wind pauses. Beneath the stillness, a faint glow rises. A warmth with no source, a color without fire. It brushes against your skin gently, the way memory touches those who have begun to forget. Inside, the temple breathes. Stone braziers line the walls on either side of the entrance hall. They are empty, hollow cups of carved basalt, yet each one emits a faint, ember-like radiance. Not bright, not burning, but warm enough to paint the walls with the soft glow of something that once lived here. It is said a sacred flame once burned in these braziers, tended by a lineage of guardians who vowed never to speak, as if breath alone might disturb the purity of the light. Others insist this was no earthly fire at all, but a shard of celestial brilliance carried down from the stars in a vessel of bone and gold. Whispers tell us the last guardian vanished before dawn on a night when no shadows fell. You move deeper, your footsteps softened by the dust of centuries. The glow from the braziers follows, spilling across pillars carved in spiraled patterns. Suns nested within suns, feathers unfolding into lantern shapes, spirals widening into what might be galaxies or might be the maps of forgotten pilgrim roads. The murals shimmer as you pass, not with color, but with presence, as if your nearness stirs what once slept here. Above you, the ceiling rises higher than the canyon itself, etched with stories only the moon can read. Constellations are carved into the stone in braided lines, and some say that on the oldest nights of the world, these carvings used to move, unfolding new patterns depending on who walked beneath them. But such tales are spoken softly, with reverence, as though they are offerings placed at the edge of a sacred dream. The temple's breath deepens as you cross another threshold. Chambers open one after another, each unveiling its own quiet wonder. In one, a mural of swirling dust and comet tails curves across the wall, like the memory of an ancient sky. In another, a massive stone feather stands upright, taller than any human, its edges worn smooth by the slow, patient hands of time. And in yet another chamber, tiny alcoves hold relics, fragments of star-shaped pottery, coils of desert reeds, a single drop of hardened sap still glowing faintly with a soft inner gold. Some believe these were offerings left by travelers searching for the flame. Others say they were gifts to the guardians, signs of gratitude for the light that once guided lost wanderers through the labyrinth of the canyon. But beneath every chamber lies a lower silence, a deeper pull, a faint invitation. The walls brighten subtly as you move, as though responding to your presence alone. They do not shine. They remember. This glow is not illumination, but recollection, like the soft afterglow of a candle that has long since surrendered its final breath. Where memory fades, the light deepens. At last you reach the heart of the temple, a circular room like the base of a forgotten star. Here, the air feels different. It hums faintly, as though tuned to a frequency just beyond the reach of waking ears. In the center stands a stone bowl carved from a single piece of canyon basalt, smooth as still water and shaped with the patience of centuries. The bowl holds nothing, yet the air above it shimmers, not like heat, not like flame, but like the boundary between this world and a dream. Some say this shimmer is the last breath of the sacred fire, refusing to vanish even after the guardians were gone. Others believe it is the first echo of a star that once fell here, leaving behind its light as a reminder that beginnings and endings are only different sides of the same ancient coin. Beneath the silence, the shimmer sways. You stand before it, and for a moment, or perhaps for a lifetime, you feel it recognize you, not as a stranger, but as another wanderer seeking warmth in a cold, patient world. It brightens faintly, a single soft glimmer, a memory reaching out like a hand, and then, slowly, gently, the shimmer dims, not extinguished, not erased, only resting, as though the temple has completed the ritual of welcoming you. The chamber cools again, and the walls settle back into their quiet glow. Something within you shifts, subtle as a breath you did not know you were holding. It is said that some lights never vanish. Whispers tell us they linger in stone, in dust, in echoes left inside the hollows of ancient rooms. Others believe they remain inside us, in the places we guard carefully, without knowing why. Perhaps the memory of the flame was never meant to burn. Perhaps it was always meant to guide. As you turn to leave, the temple remains in its twilight stillness, waiting for the next traveler who carries questions instead of torches. The canyon air greets you once more, cool and watchful, as the first traces of the night gather along the horizon. And somewhere behind you, deep within the temple's heart, the memory of the flame shimmers again, a quiet promise, lingering in the dust and in the dreams of those who wander reverently through the dark. It begins with a breath, a soft exhale rising from the stone beneath your feet, as though the earth itself has been waiting for you. In forgotten ages, they say the citadel above stood like a crown of sandstone against the sky. Its towers caught the wind like flutes, and its courtyards glowed beneath moonlit ceremonies. But time, with its quiet hunger, has gnawed its battlements into broken silhouettes. Only the foundations remain now, a few toppled columns, a scattering of carved fragments, and a single sun-bleached stairway descending into darkness. It is toward this stairway that you now drift, drawn by a sense of inevitability older than memory. Some paths call not to the ears, but to the bones. And this is one such path. The first step down seems to hum faintly beneath your weight. The second sighs. The third feels warm, as if recently touched by unseen hands. It is said that beneath the ruins of the old citadel runs a network of stone corridors where shadows behave as though alive, where they do not merely fall, but listen. Some believe these passages were carved before the first kings raised their banners, before the first myths found voices. Others whisper that the stone itself was guided by dreams, shaped by artisans who worked in trance-like devotion, following the murmured instructions of something ancient in the deep. The air cools around you as you descend, yet a strange stillness holds it steady, as though preserving the atmosphere of a long-vanished era. Your fingers brush the walls, damp, cold, and faintly pulsing with some mineral glow. You carry no torch, and yet dim glimmers ripple across the stone, enough to reveal each step like a candle lighting itself, just for you. And then, the staircase widens. You step into a corridor that curves gently, like the inside of a giant shell. The air becomes warm, the silence thickens, and the shadows along the floor begin to move. They drift, not in sharp, jagged silhouettes, but in soft, fluid shapes. Like ink swirling in water, they respond to your presence, though not urgently. Rather, with the slow grace of guardians performing a ritual they have enacted for countless centuries. Whispers tell us that early rulers years came here before they claimed their thrones. In this quiet chamber beneath the world, they would be stripped of titles, stripped of ambition, stripped even of certainty. The shadows would listen to their hearts, sensing not the words they spoke but the truth beneath them. Those found worthy would hear a name emerge from the darkness. Not the name given to them at birth, but the name they carried within. The name that revealed who they were meant to become. Some say this was how the citadel once chose its leaders. Others say it was how the land itself chose. You continue down the corridor, your footsteps softened by the lingering warmth. The shadows respond to each movement, drifting into patterns that resemble half-formed symbols. They stretch, curl, contract, and expand in quiet reverence. None of it feels threatening. If anything, you sense welcome, or perhaps recognition. There comes a moment when the corridor narrows once more, and the stone around you begins to vibrate with barely audible resonance. Not quite music, not quite voice. More like a sustained exhale from the deep chambers of the world. When you step across the threshold, the source reveals itself. The chamber opens like a hidden heart. A broad, circular hall of sandstone. Walls, marked with spirals and star carvings. A ceiling lost in darkness, yet shimmering faintly, as though dusted with powdered moonlight. At the center lies the floor. Smooth, polished, and alive with drifting shadows. They glide across the stone in slow, rippling shapes that almost form letters. Not any script you recognize, and yet, something stirs in the back of your mind. Not memory, not imagination. Something quieter, older, like the sensation of trying to recall a dream from childhood. You take a step forward, and the shadows lengthen. You take another, and they rise in gentle waves. Not toward you, but around you, folding into patterns that seem to listen, to sense, to measure. Some believe this chamber was a sanctuary where people came to confront their own echoes, the lingering remnants of choices they never made, words they never spoke, paths they never walked. Others insist it was a hall of counsel where ancestors whispered guidance not through speech, but through the way light bent and shadow moved. Whether any of this is true, no one can say. Truth beneath ancient stone does not travel in straight lines. You walk slowly, your breath deepening, matching the rhythm of the drifting forms at your feet. They stretch into twin arcs. They shrink into spirals. They gather briefly into a shape that resembles a name. Not spoken, but suggested. A name that resonates faintly inside your ribs. Perhaps it belongs to someone you once knew. Perhaps it belongs to someone you once were. The warmth of the air wraps around you, steady and soothing. There is no question to ask, no answer to seek. This place was not built for certainty, but for listening. Listening to the soft things inside you that the outer world often silences. You reach the far end of the chamber. There, rising from the stone like a solitary sentinel, stands a pillar. Tall, cylindrical, carved with spirals that wind upward in a slow ascent. Each curve seems to mimic breath. Each ridge feels alive. The spirals resemble paths leading back toward the world above, where daylight waits patiently in its quiet throne of sky. You touch the pillar. It is warm, and in that warmth you feel something shift, not in the stone, but in the shadows. They soften, dimming with gentle finality, their movements slow to a faint ripple, like a pond settling after a tossed pebble. The chamber exhales. Some truths, it seems, prefer to rest after being witnessed. You stand for a moment longer, hands on the stone, thoughts drifting towards silence. There is no revelation, no sudden clarity, no dramatic unveiling, only the soft awareness that something ancient has acknowledged you. Not with words, but with presence. As you turn back toward the corridor, the shadows keep still, as though returning to sleep. Whatever name they murmured, whatever meaning they traced across the floor, stays with them. Not lost, but held in trust. It is said that the chamber does not speak the same way twice. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and so you leave as you arrived, guided by faint glimmers, accompanied by warmth that should not exist at such depth. Step by step, you climb the quiet spiral of the staircase, the air cooling slowly. Above, the broken citadel waits beneath the open sky. But something remains from below. A whisper, a trace, a softness, a reminder that beneath the silence of ruins, there are still places where shadows remember the first names ever spoken. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was always meant to find you. In forgotten waters, far beyond the reach of ordinary maps, there is said to be an island that breathes with the slow rhythm of the sea. Sailors spoke of it only in quiet hours, when lantern light trembled and the horizon felt too large. They called it many names, some too old to recall, but most agreed on one thing. The island appeared only when the tides were neither high nor low, but caught somewhere in a dreaming in between. And so, the chapter begins, with moonlight stretching thinly across a restless ocean. The waves move, as though murmuring to themselves, silver-backed and thoughtful, rising and falling with a patient cadence. Somewhere beneath that shimmering veil, a shape begins to surface, not with force, not with any storm-born violence, but gently, like a whisper returning from a long journey. Sandstone ridges crest first, then a curve of beach, then dark outlines of ruins once claimed by the deep. The island exhales, the sea inhales, and a place half remembered by the world comes into soft, sacred view. For a time, nothing stirs but the tide. Then, as though guided by an unseen invitation, the listener drifts closer, your vessel gliding with the quiet grace of something entering a sacred hall. It is said that the water around this island carries faint traces of light, and indeed, as your bow cuts the surface, pale glimmers rise like drifting embers, floating in patterns too delicate to be mere chance. When your feet touch the sand, the shore glows beneath you. Not brightly, only faintly, like the afterglow of a dream trying not to fade. Each grain shimmers with bioluminescent dust, forming soft trails with every step you take. The air is cool, shaped by ocean breath and moonlit wind. And for a moment, you simply stand there, letting the island's quiet welcome settle around you. Ahead, the first of the ancient pathways reveals itself. From beneath the tide, smooth stones lift slowly, awakened by your presence or by the pull of the moon. They rise in a pattern reminiscent of thought, wandering, spiraled, purposeful only to those who once knew their secrets. Some believe these stones respond to intention rather than footfall, shifting themselves like memories aligning. As you walk, whispers tell us that the island begins to speak. Not in words, but in textures and shapes. Carvings await you at the first ruined archway. Wave marks etched into pillars, spirals like coiled currents, lines that drift and bend like the sea in meditation. It is said the people who once lived here shaped their entire world around water's wisdom. They listened not only to storms and tides, but to the silence between waves. They learned from the sea's stillness, reading its moods as though it were a vast celestial script. Some stories claim they built chambers designed to amplify ocean echoes. Others tell of vaulted halls where moonlight struck pools in ways that revealed hidden maps. Wet constellations guiding journeys to places unknown. Their architecture seems to move even now. Walls curve as though sculpted by flowing water. Columns tilt gently, as if bowing to a tide long gone. Everywhere you look, there is a sense of fluidity, of stone remembering what it once felt like to drift. Beneath the silence, something hums. It begins faintly, more a vibration than a sound. It travels through the soles of your feet, through the stone beneath, through the shifting sand beyond. Some believe this hum was once the island's heartbeat. Others say it is the voice of those who left, an echo stretched thin across time, still resonating with the memory of their final tide. As you explore deeper, moonlight threads through broken ceilings, casting pale paths across flooded courtyards. Pools reflect the sky in fragments, rippling whenever the breeze brushes the water's skin. You move slowly, letting the island unfurl in its own time. A fallen statue leans against a pool's edge, its face eroded, its hands cupped as though holding the sea itself. Around it, moss glows faintly where the water kisses the stone. It is here that old tales speak of the island's disappearance. Some say the rising tides once became erratic, shifting without the moon's guidance. Storms arrived unannounced. The sea climbed higher each season, and the people, attuned as they were to water's will, understood this not as threat, but as summons. They prepared themselves for a journey, one not taken by vessels or sails, but by surrender. It is said they followed the ocean into deeper realms, trusting that the waters they listened to all their lives would carry them safely. And so they walked into the tide. When the final moon rose, they were gone. Only the hum remained, soft as breath on glass. Only carvings, only spiraled symbols, only the architecture that continued its slow, tidal remembering. You pass beneath the half-collapsed gateway where sea vines dangle like ancient script. Mist curls through the arch, and your footsteps echo in a hall that seems more dream than ruin. The walls here bear markings shaped like drifting currents. Some bend upward, as if rising toward the sky. Others turn downward, spiraling like whirlpools. Light filters through cracks, illuminating droplets suspended on overhanging roots, each droplet catching a piece of moonlight, each one trembling as though alive. At the far end, you find a chamber open to the night sky. The tide laps gently below, creeping along the edges of a platform whose stones pulse faintly beneath your touch. When you kneel, you feel the hum growing stronger. It is not a warning. It is not a cry for help. It is something softer, a greeting from something ancient and patient, perhaps waiting to be remembered. Some say that if you listen here, truly listen, the island speaks its story in the rhythm of the sea. And for a moment, as the waves rise and fall, you sense the outline of a people who saw water not as a force to conquer, but as a companion, a guide, a keeper of time and memory. You sense ritual performed in moonlit pools, songs sung in harmony with tides, offerings left in spiraled shells, a way of life shaped entirely by the breath of the ocean. But then the tide begins to climb, slowly at first, tenderly. The hum deepens, stones tremble, as though acknowledging the water's return. Pathways that carried you inward begin to vanish beneath the rising sea. Sand shifts beneath your feet. The glowing dust dims softly, like embers lowering themselves into sleep. You take a final look at the ruins, the drifting patterns, the spiraled markings, the ancient fluidity carved in every surface. And in that moment, you feel the island's nature. Not a place meant to stay, but one meant to appear only when the sea dreams of being seen. As you make your way back to your vessel, the island hums once more. The sound is low, warm, and strangely reassuring, like the last note of an old lullaby. Then the water lifts. The ruins sink. The pathways drift apart, becoming mere ripples. The glowing sands dull to darkness. By the time you reach the edge of your boat, the island has already begun its descent into silence. And soon, beneath the moon's pale gaze, it fades. Not vanished, not drowned, but dreaming once again beneath the rising tides. Some voices, it is said, only echo when we are ready to listen, and some places return only when the world grows quiet enough to hear them. It begins with an image that seems to flicker at the edges of the mind, as though remembered from a dream rather than discovered in waking life. On a remote plateau of wind-smooth stone, where the horizon stretches in a long quiet breath, there stands an observatory abandoned before history learned to write itself. Some say the plateau was once the seabed of a vanished ocean. Others believe it was shaped by the hands of forgotten artisans who carved their questions into the land itself. But most agree on one truth. This place feels older than memory, older than silence, older even than the names we give to time. The observatory rises like a circular shell, its dome cracked yet still reaching upward, curved like a cupped hand offering itself to the sky. Mist clings to its broken arches. Dust, fine as powdered bone, drifts along the ground, stirred gently by winds that cannot decide if they belong to earth or something deeper. It is said that the plateau has no shadows at dusk, only soft veils of light that cling to the stones like unspoken intentions. And so we approach, slowly, as one might approach a sleeping thing that dreams with its eyes open. Inside the observatory, the air grows cooler, hushed, touched by the faint scent of old minerals and extinguished torches. The walls curve inward, like the inside of a great fossil, their surfaces covered in carvings so worn they seem less etched than remembered by the stone itself. At the center stands the great lens. It is clouded, milky in some places, translucent in others, like ice that has weathered centuries of thaw and refreeze. It is framed by a ring of metal, oxidized bronze, cracked but still regal, resting upon a pedestal shaped like a blooming flower turned to stone. The lens does not look upward. Its silent face is turned toward the open horizon, as though the sky itself were only a distant mirror, and the real secrets lay hidden where the world bends into faint, trembling distance. Some believe the builders positioned it this way to study the unseen winds, currents of light and breath that move beneath what the eye calls real. Others whisper that the observatory once listened, not with ears jabaz, but with patient, trembling stillness, to the echoes of forgotten worlds drifting just beyond the crust of perception. And as you step closer, you feel it too, the faint hum beneath your feet, as though the entire chamber were breathing you in. You place your hands lightly upon the edge of the lens, expecting coldness, but instead finding warmth, a warmth that pulses, slow and rhythmic, like the resting heartbeat of some vast creature beneath the surface. The chamber shifts, not in movement, but in atmosphere, like the moment before rain touches the ground, or the soft inhalation of a sleeping forest. Through the faint film of the lens, light ripples, soft, trembling bands that shimmer across the glass like distant waves of heat. They gather, dissolve, and reform again, whispering their presence with an intimacy that feels almost sentient. And then, shapes appear, not solid, not clear, but silhouettes of phenomena the eye cannot hold for long. Drifting forms like veiled moons, pulses of light that resemble the breathing of the sky, spirals of dust that rise and collapse as if responding to an ancient rhythm. It is said that these visions are not apparitions, but memories, echoes of the earth before language divided the world into seen and unseen, breath older than constellations, light older than the naming of stars. Along the circular walls, ancient notes carved in looping script begin to glow faintly. They illuminate like fireflies, awakening in the dark. You trace your fingers over them, the carvings shallow yet deliberate. Their meaning is unclear, yet their feeling unmistakable. They speak of watchers, of those who believe that sight was not an act of searching outward, but of remembering inward the fragile, trembling truths the sky once whispered and then forgot. Beneath the silence, one carving reads, "All things leave echoes." Another, "Where memory fades, listen again." And the most cryptic, "Not all stars are in the sky." The lens brightens, recognizing your attention, as if sensing that you are beginning to understand, or at least beginning to ask the right questions. A soft hum fills the chamber, low, almost melodic, a sound that vibrates at the bone, not the ear. Perhaps the watchers could hear this hum too, standing here in ages before ages, waiting for the unseen to make itself known for just a heartbeat, just a breath. Perhaps they found answers, or perhaps they only found deeper silence. And in that silence, perhaps they discovered something the world has long forgotten. That wonder does not always come from revelation, but from the invitation to keep listening. Slowly, gently, the shimmering tremors across the lens begin to fade. The rippling silhouettes dissolve into the milky surface, like ink settling into still water. The hum softens. The carvings dim until they return to their original quiet state. A calm settles over the observatory, soft, ancient, accepting. You take a single step back, and the lens becomes motionless. The chamber breathes out a long exhale, almost relieved. Outside, the horizon glows with the blue-gold hush of a descending day. Clouds drift low, brushing against the dome's jagged rim like soft hands feeling for a pulse. Perhaps the watchers knew that their observatory would one day be found again. Perhaps they hoped it would. Or perhaps it was never meant to be found at all. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Some light only reveals itself when the heart grows quiet enough to notice its trembling edge. And as you turn away from the lens, leaving the chamber bathed in its own gentle dusk, the thought lingers like a final breath in the still air. Not all observatories look upward. Some watch the spaces between breaths. Some look inward, toward the soft realm where the unseen waits patiently, not to be discovered, but to be remembered. It is said that in a desert where night descends quickly and softly, where the sky folds itself into deep indigo moments after the sun slips beneath the dunes, there lies a sanctuary so quiet that even the wind lowers its voice when passing near. Some call it the place where breath first learned its shape. Others whisper that it was formed not by human hands, nor by time, but by a single divine exhalation released into the newborn world. On this night, you stand at the edge of that desert, where the horizon glows with the last embers of dusk. Before you rises a simple dune-side entrance, an archway carved not with harsh lines, but with the gentle, relaxed curve of a half-exhaled sigh. Its shape seems less built than breathed into being, and as the night settles deeper, you step forward, drawn by something older than memory. Perhaps older than language itself. Beneath the archway, the air cools. You enter, and the desert's vast openness narrows into a sanctuary that unfolds in warm, quiet curves. No edges, no sharp corners. Only the soft bends of stone shaped, as though the wind had lingered here for centuries, sculpting each surface the way a river shapes its bed. Slowly, patiently, reverently. Here, the walls possess a warmth like held air. If you place your palm against them, you might feel the faint echo of something living inside the stone. A pulse, a memory, or perhaps just the desert's long inhale. Along the corridor, patterns drift across the surfaces. They resemble ripples on water, or the delicate spirals left on sand by the passing of a tiny creature. They move only in suggestion, not literally shifting before your eyes, but carrying a softness that hints at motion. Whispers tell us that these patterns are the visual remnants of the sanctuary's first moment. The breath that created it, frozen into the walls like a forgotten sigh. As you walk deeper, your footsteps seem to quiet themselves, as though sound hesitates to disturb this place. In shallow alcoves, scrolls rest like sleeping relics. Their parchment, aged to a gentle clay brown, holds the secrets of mystics long vanished from the world. These were the breath keepers, wanderers who believed the soul lived not within the body, but between inhalation and exhalation, suspended in the fragile pause where the world briefly waits. It is said they practiced rituals of silence here. Rituals meant not to summon deities or shape fate, but to return the mind to the first breath ever taken, the breath that began time. Some scrolls describe meditations performed beneath desert moons, where mystics would hold still until even their thoughts exhaled. Others speak of star-marked nights when the sanctuary hummed with a low resonance, guiding its visitors toward a stillness so profound that they could feel ancient worlds drifting through their lungs. You pause before one alcove. A scroll lies unrolled, its ink faded into soft oceanic tones. The script is unreadable, twisted, spiraled, more like wind traces than words. Yet something about it feels familiar, as though you once knew this language in another lifetime, whispered to you between your first breaths. The corridor narrows now. The sanctuary seems to draw inward, guiding you gently toward its heart. The light dims, not into darkness, but into a softer, more intimate glow, like the inside of a cupped hand. Ahead waits the chamber where the air vibrates with a barely audible hum. The hum reaches you before you arrive. A faint vibration, delicate as a thread of sound stretched across centuries. It trembles through your ribs, through your spine, through the quiet places inside you where memory sleeps. Some believe this resonance is the lingering echo of the sanctuary's first moment, the vibration left behind by the breath that created everything here. Others say the hum belongs not to gods, but to the desert itself, that at the dawn of time, when the world first cooled, the desert exhaled, and the sanctuary formed like frost on glass. You step into the chamber. It is a round, womb-like space, smooth as though shaped by a single sweeping gesture. The air is warm, not hot like desert wind, warm like breath released near your cheek. The hum surrounds you gently, neither growing nor fading, but existing as a constant presence, like a heartbeat heard from within. At the center lies a simple bowl of polished stone. It is empty, yet it glows with a soft amber warmth, as though holding light breathed into it long ago. The bowl's surface shimmers faintly with spirals, the same ripples seen on the walls outside. But here they gather more intimately, curling toward the bowl's center like a gathering of secrets. Some claim the bowl once held a fragment of the divine breath, a warmth so pure it could heal the grief of any traveler who entered. Others insist nothing was ever inside the bowl, that its emptiness is its purpose. A reminder that breath, like meaning, cannot be contained. You approach slowly. The hum deepens for a moment, as if acknowledging you. The air seems to thicken, warm and velvety, wrapping around your shoulders like a cloak woven from silence. Beneath the stillness, a memory stirs. Not your memory, but one older, wider, belonging to the desert itself. The spirals on the bowl pulse with the faintest glow, and then, gently, the hum begins to fade. Not abruptly, not with finality, but like a distant chant dissolving into the night, returning to the sands, returning to the stars. The bowl grows dimmer, the chamber softens into quiet. You stand in the stillness, held not by stone, but by something breath-like, tender, and eternal. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps this sanctuary opens only to those who arrive in silence. And perhaps, as some ancient voices suggest, the divine breath still lingers here, waiting to be heard only when the world is ready to listen. As the last trace of the hum dissolves, you linger for a moment longer, suspended in the fragile pause between inhalation and exhalation. Here, in this desert hollow, where stone remembers and silence breathes, you understand. Some sacred places are made not of stone, but of breath held gently in the dark. And with that realization, the night folds around you like a closing prayer.